Good evening. We are not here to be stirred, nor to be lulled by pleasant phrases. We are here to uncover a law of spirit that ends fear. Not by excitement, not by human will, but in silence, in stillness, in quietness, in confidence, the truth of God is made evident. God is the only power. And because God is the only power, we do not tremble before appearances, nor do we try to prop them up with positive thoughts. We rest in that which is and has always been closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Hear this plainly. God is not your helper, standing at the edge of your problems, waiting for a call. God is the source itself, the life of your life, the substance of your substance, the very consciousness of being. I and the Father are one. I will never leave you nor forsake you. If the presence is indivisible, then what flows from that presence is indivisible. The supply of God is not sometimes here and sometimes absent. It is the nature of God unfolding as the very activity of your being. Here is the test by which fear loses its ground. Anything that can be interrupted, delayed, withheld, or taken away was never the divine supply. If a job begins and ends, it was a channel. If a client comes and goes, it was a channel. If an account swells and shrinks, it was a channel. Symbols change. Source is changeless. To measure God by the behavior of a channel is to worship the cup and forget the ocean. The cup may spill. The ocean remains. You know the names of the claims: bills, deadlines, payroll, rent, markets, medical expenses. You have seen their dates and their numbers. You have felt their breath upon your neck. But be not afraid. There are not two powers, God and bills, God and rent, God and markets. God is the only power. Lack is not a power. Numbers on a page are not a power. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Not because you are clever, not because you argue with figures, but because the presence is one and indivisible, and in that oneness there is no opposing might. Our aim together is not to beg, not to flatter a distant deity, not to paste optimism over anxiety. Our aim is a practical treatment that restores consciousness to source before we meet decisions and demands. We will state the truth, and then we will be still. For voicing the truth clears the mist, but the power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows. In that silence, guidance appears without strain, and action becomes simple. Make this the foundation. This is the temple of the living God. The Spirit of God is upon me. Therefore, supply cannot be outside of me, cannot be apart from me, cannot be scheduled by calendars or canceled by men. If you can be separated from your supply, it was not God. Return now inwardly to the One. Let the fear of numbers yield to the promise. Lo, I am with you always. And as we stand in that awareness, calm, unhurried, we begin. Now let us look squarely at the habit that ties the knot again after we have just untied it. We speak to God as if God were far off, and in the same breath, we treat conditions as if they were here, near, immediate, and causative. We go into prayer as if to persuade deity to cross a distance, but we come out still checking the wind of circumstance to see which way the favor is blowing. That is, living in two powers. And as long as we grant that divided government in consciousness, God on one side, conditions on the other. Fear will continue to knock, and we will continue to answer. Listen to the modern names we have given these two powers. Income versus expenses. Employer versus economy. Client versus competition. Savings versus emergencies. We even add interest rates versus opportunity. Credit scores versus open doors. Do you see? We set good against evil, up against down, and then we kneel between them begging for the teeter-totter to land on our side. But there is no such thing anywhere at any time as an opposing power to God. Numbers on a page are not a power. A date on a bill is not a power. A market's mood is not a power. The only power that these pictures seem to have is the power we lend them by believing that they stand outside of God, outside of the One. Here is the idolatry that hides in spiritual language. We make a person our source, and then we fear that person's displeasure. We make a job our source, and then we fear a change in management. We make an account our source, and then we fear the graph's downward turn. We make a market our source, and then we fear the headline. This is the hidden idol. It bows to the cup and forgets the ocean. It stands at the altar and whispers, "I and the Father are one," while secretly peeking to see if the deposit hit. Be not afraid. "Thou shalt have no other gods before me" is not a threat. It is a mercy. It frees us from worshiping shadows. It is not the amount of money. It is not the speed of a payment. It is not the favor of a person. It is the consciousness of God's allness that reveals form, place, and timing where and as needed. I and the Father are one. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Closer than breath, nearer than hands and feet. The presence is the life, the substance, the activity of your being. And from that oneness, the forms appear as the need appears, without strain, without compromise, without fear. Understand the symptom, and you will find the cause. Anxiety is not warning you of a real lack. It is warning you that you have believed supply to be outside and withholdable. Fear persists only while we hold to two powers, God and conditions. Release the second power. Let the page of figures be a page of figures. Let the boss be a man or woman doing their day. Let markets dance their dance. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, not because the world behaves, but because the world is not your source. Rest now in this. Lo, I am with you always. The Spirit of God is upon me. This is the temple of the living God. In this recognition, the idol falls of its own weight, and with it falls the fear that fed upon our divided gaze. God is the only power, and in that single power, which is presence, we are safe, supplied, and unhindered. Begin here and do not move from it. God is the only power. If there is only one power, there is not another called lack to oppose it. There is not a second mind whispering scarcity. There is not a law of shortage. There is not a presence of absence. What calls itself lack is not a power, not a law, not an intelligence. It is only a suggestion, presenting itself to thought, asking for belief. Refuse it belief, and you will discover that the serpent had no venom. It was the fear behind it that seemed to sting. God is the only power. Hold to that, quietly, steadfastly, until the mind, tired of wrestling, lays down its arms and lets the heart remember what it has always known. I and the Father are one. Never deviate from the beginning. In the first light of revelation, We are told that all that God made is good, and God finished, and God rested. If the creative action of God is complete and good, where shall we place a category called absence of good? Do you see that we would be inventing a second creator to account for it? There is no such creator. There is no such lawgiver. There is no such opposing force. The only reality lack has is the temporary credit we granted by accepting a belief in two powers. Withdraw that belief. Let the pictures on the screen be pictures. Let the word insufficient be a word without a world behind it. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, because no other power exists to forge it. Now then, let us speak plainly of money. Money is a token. It is ink on paper, digits on glass, metal stamped with a face. It is a sign, a symbol, a human convenience to measure exchange. But supply is not a token. Supply is the activity of divine life expressing as right provision, right timing, right opportunity, right ideas. Supply is the living movement of the presence within your own being, appearing as the form that answers the need of the moment. Sometimes it appears as a check, sometimes as a contract, sometimes as a cancellation of an expense, sometimes as an idea that eliminates the need itself. Do not measure God by the token. Let the token measure, after the fact, the grace that has already flowed. As a matter of fact, the struggle ceases not when more tokens arrive, but when the acceptance of a second power departs. The moment you rest in one power, panic loses its argument. Anxiety is hushed. You are not striving to draw good from outside. You are consenting to the good that is the very substance of your life. I will never leave you, nor forsake you. Lo, I am with you always. These are not ornaments to hang in your room. They are present tense realities to anchor your consciousness. Let them replace the numbers on the page for a moment. Be still. In that stillness, expectancy becomes natural, not forced. Quiet, not feverish. Trusting, not naive. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the statement of truth. And out of that silence, simple steps appear. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God, supply reveals itself as what it has always been. Not a struggle, but presence unfolding. We come now to the subtle habit that keeps the heart on a roller coaster. We choose one pipe and call it the river. We take a job, a person, a contract, an account, and make of it a measuring stick for our future. And when that stick wobbles, we call it doom. We look at a supervisor's expression and prophesy famine. We stare at a platform's algorithm and predict drought. We watch a graph dip and we baptize it, my destiny. Do you see how we have enthroned a channel and then knelt to it? We have taken a window and named it the sky. Let us be very clear. Channels are many and they shift. They open and they close. They brighten and they dim. Source is one and it is constant. Closer to you than breath, nearer than hands and feet. I and the Father are one. Supply is not in the pipe. It is in the pressure of life itself, flowing as right ideas, right timing, right opportunity, right adjustment. Bless the pipe. Do not worship it. Appreciate the instrument. Rest in the music. The ocean does not depend upon a single cup to prove it is wet. God is the only power. Therefore, no instrument can be your God, and no change in instruments can separate you from your good. Consider the pictures that so easily frighten. A client moves on. A company restructures. A platform changes its rules. A market drops as headlines shout. In each case, the mind rushes to say, "There goes my supply." Be still. Your supply did not go anywhere, because it was never in the client, never in the company, never in the platform, never in the market. Those were avenues along which the infinite found expression for a time. The avenue changes, the life does not. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, not because channels will never change, but because no other power exists to withhold the activity of God from being God. There is no law of lack. There is only the law of spirit being itself as the need of the moment fulfilled. Here is the discipline of the practitioner. When appreciation rises for a fine channel, give thanks. And when a channel closes, give thanks. In both cases, refuse worship. Hold lightly the form. Hold fast to the presence. Make this your inner posture. This is the temple of the living God. The Spirit of God is upon me. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Lo, I am with you always. Let these be more to you than the email from management or the number in the ledger. The moment you feel the tightening in the chest, you have found your altar. Do not run first to men or to screens. Retire within, even for a minute. State the truth simply. God is the only power. I and the Father are one. All that God made is good. And then be very silent. Voicing the truth clears the mist, but the power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows. Wait without strain. In that quietness, fear loosens. Identity stabilizes. You will feel the river beneath the pipes. Then and only then, the simple step appears. Sometimes a call to make, sometimes a line to write, sometimes an expense to release, sometimes nothing at all but continued rest. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God. The music plays through whatever instrument is ready. A channel may change, but source cannot. And when consciousness rests in source, supply is secure, and action becomes calm, right, and unhurried. Let us be very clear now about method, because here the habit of centuries must yield to the way of spirit. There are two kinds of prayer in the world. One begs and bargains, asking a distant deity to do something later, if possible, if willing, if conditions permit. The other is treatment, an act of recognition that God is the only power, the only presence, already here, already the life of your life, already the substance of your supply. The first assumes separation, the second rests in oneness. The first strains, the second is still. Why does begging fail? Because it affirms the very separation it seeks to heal. It whispers, I am here, supply is there, and God must be persuaded to cross the gap. But there is no gap. Lo, I am with you always. I and the Father are one. This is the temple of the living God. To beg for what already is to keep your eyes on the shadows and call it night. To recognize what already is to let the sun you are standing in be felt upon your face. Now then, hear this once more in its proper order. Voicing the truth is necessary. It is not the healing agency. The statements of truth clear the mist, steady the trembling, anchor the mind to the rock. But the power of God is made manifest in the silence that comes after the stating of truth. The seal is placed on the treatment through our silence. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God made tangible in stillness, in quietness, in confidence. What then is treatment? It is a returning to spiritual fact, not the asserting of human hope. It is the inner realization that because God is within, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, the fullness of supply is within the very orbit of your being. You cannot go anywhere to find it, nor can you go anywhere to leave it behind. As light cannot be separated from the sun, so you cannot be separated from that which God is being as your life. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, not because you have persuaded God to act, but because no other power exists to withhold what the One is already being. Make this your short treatment, before bills, before meetings, before decisions. Retire within, even for a minute. Say quietly, without strain, God is the only power. I and the Father are one. This is the temple of the living God. The Spirit of God is upon me. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Then be very silent. Do not outline, do not reach. Let the presence be presence. Let the assurance rise of itself, like warmth seeping through a cool room. When the inner yes is felt, even faintly, open your eyes. Proceed without hurry. If an action is given, take it simply. If none is given, rest simply. Either way, you are not begging a future. You are moving from realized oneness. And in that recognition, supply appears as what it has always been. The effortless activity of God fulfilling itself where you are. Be not afraid. The work is done in the silence. The form follows as needed. Now we shift from analysis to remembrance. The mind recites figures. The soul must recite promises. The mind points to dates and balances. Spirit answers with, I will never leave you nor forsake you. The mind measures time and probability. The presence speaks, Lo, I am with you, here, now. Do you see how different this is from trying to argue with a ledger? We are not arguing. We are returning. God is the only power. And the promises of Scripture are not comfort decorations. They are living anchors cast into the infinity that indwells you. Hear them as present fact, not as wish. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be very still. Let that sentence enter the very place where the breath begins. Lo, I am with you unto the end of the world. Pause, not to force a feeling, but to allow the quivering of thought to settle. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. The weapon may wear a date, a notice, an interest rate, a demand, but it has no authority to separate you from the source that is your very life. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, of red numbers, of deadlines, of debt, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. This is promise consciousness. It does not deny a page. It denies that the page is a power. Make of these promises your gentle mantra. Speak them slowly, almost like breathing. Not to convince God. God needs no convincing. Not to hypnotize yourself. Truth needs no props. But to yield human thought into divine awareness. To let the scattered attention be gathered into one. After each promise, pause inside. Wait without strain until the nervous system softens, until the heart remembers its native rhythm. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the statement of truth. The seal is placed on the treatment through our silence. Try it now as a simple order of remembrance. Quietly, I and the Father are one. Wait, this is the temple of the living God. Wait, the Spirit of God is upon me. Wait, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Wait, lo, I am with you, now, here, always. Wait, no weapon that is formed against me shall prosper. Wait. As you do, notice how the grip of the numbers loosens, how the breath becomes easy, how a warmth, subtle, steady, takes its seat within. Then, if a bill must be opened, open it. But do not let the amount be your first authority. Let promise precede figure. If a call must be made, make it from this quiet, not from haste. If an idea arrives, receive it simply. If none arrives, rest simply. Either way, you have let Scripture replace the numbers on the page as your governing consciousness, and you will find that form follows obedience to presence. Be not afraid. God is the only power. These promises are not merely words. They are the living voice of the one within you, returning consciousness to inseparable supply. And in that recognition, in that silence after truth, provision appears without strain, orderly, timely, sufficient, by the grace of God, in stillness, in quietness, in confidence. Now then, having stated the truth, be very still. Not to make anything happen, not to push spirit across a finish line, but to let God be God. The demonstration is not of you, it is of God. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God made tangible in stillness, in quietness, in confidence. We have spoken the word. God is the only power. I and the Father are one. This is the temple of the living God. And now we retire from words into the sanctuary that gives those words substance. Be very still. Understand what is taking place. The statements of truth clear the surface of thought as a breeze clears a mist. They steady the attention. They gather the scattered concerns into one. But the power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the statement of truth. In that silence, the indwelling presence ceases to be a doctrine and becomes a felt reality, closer than breath, nearer than hands and feet. The seal is placed on the treatment through our silence. You may feel it as a settling, as if a weight you had been carrying drops quietly to the floor. You may sense the breath becoming unforced. You may notice a warmth in the chest or a simple yes without words. It is not excitement, it is quietness. It is not a surge, it is stillness. It is not bravado, it is confidence. Be not afraid. I will never leave you nor forsake you. In this hush, the compulsion to manipulate relaxes. The need to outline an outcome loosens its grip. You are not abandoning action. You are abandoning panic. You may still call, negotiate, plan, write, meet, but you will not worship the outcome, and you will not fear the calendar. You will move from obedience, not from pressure, from guidance, not from guessing. Lo, I am with you always. Right there, in the very atmosphere of stillness, direction rises without strain. Sometimes a word to speak, sometimes a number to recheck, sometimes a door to knock upon, sometimes a door to let be. And sometimes the action is no action at all, but continued rest, while conditions reweave themselves around your quiet. Mark the holy transition taking place in you. You have moved from mental efforting to spiritual listening, from forcing a result to receiving right direction. From calculating your safety by accounts and opinions to resting in the presence that is safety and supply. Lack has not been argued down. It has been unmasked as a suggestion without law. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, not because you have become clever at tactics, but because in the one power there is no second power to enforce a threat. Stay here a moment longer, without reaching. Let the assurance deepen, as if roots were finding water. God is the only power. I and the Father are one. This is the temple of the living God. Be very still and let those truths be true without your help. When at last you rise, rise slowly. Do the next simple thing and only the next. If you must speak, speak from the hush. If you must decide, decide from the quiet. And if you must wait, wait with dignity. In this way, supply appears without strain, not as something you wrestled into form, but as the effortless activity of the presence that is supply, revealing itself where you are. When the envelope is in your hand, when the calendar flashes meeting in 5, when a decision waits and the pulse climbs, this is the hour for a brief, true treatment. First, pause the reaction. Acknowledge the flutter without bowing to it. Say within yourself, "This fear is a suggestion that I am separate from my good." It is not a power. It is a suggestion, asking for my belief. Be very gentle. Do not argue with the body. Just refuse the premise of separation. Be not afraid. Now declare the truth simply and without strain. God is the only power. Therefore, lack is not a power. Delay is not a power. People are not my source. There are not two powers, God and figures, God and calendars, God and opinions. God is the only power. Let the words be plain, steady, unhurried, like placing stones across a stream. Establish the indwelling. Right here, not there. Now, not later. This is the temple of the living God. The presence is within me, closer than breath, nearer than hands and feet. I and the Father are one. I cannot go anywhere to leave it behind, nor can I go anywhere to find it. It is the life of my life, the substance of my supply, the activity of my being. Adopt promise consciousness. Let Scripture, not numbers, be first authority. Slowly, quietly. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Wait a breath. No weapon that is formed against me shall prosper. Wait again. Lo, I am with you always. Wait. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Wait. I live and move and have my being in God. Let these not be ornaments, but anchors. After each promise, allow a moment of soft waiting. The mind quiets. The heart remembers. Now stop the words. Enter silence. Be very still. Let the seal be placed through stillness. Do not reach. Do not outline. Consent to presence. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the statement of truth. Stay until peace touches you, or a quiet certainty, or a simple next step emerges of itself. No thunder, no strain, just a clear this. Then return to action without worship. Do the next right thing. Open the bill and read it calmly. Send the email plainly. Make the call without pleading. Revise the budget with dignity. Propose the idea. Release the expense. Wait if waiting is given. Act as an instrument, not as a savior. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God. In this way, a true treatment moves you from fear and begging into realized oneness, and then into calm, directed action. And so it is. Now let identity stand up in you. We do not leave the hush of silence to put on again the costume of a beggar. We rise remembering, I am not a person trying to get money. I am the place where God's activity is expressed. This is the temple of the living God. Here, within, closer than breath, nearer than hands and feet, the infinite lives, moves, and has its being, appearing as right ideas, right timing, right provision, right adjustment. God is the only power. Therefore I walk not as one exposed to the weather of economics, but as one robed in assurance and clad in the armor of spirit. Feel that robe. It is not fabric. It is consciousness of oneness. Feel that armor. It is not metal. It is the realization that there is no second power to strike you. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Not a headline, not a notice, not an opinion. These weapons are only suggestions asking for belief. Keep the robe on. Keep the armor bright. Through remembrance. I and the Father are one. Be not afraid. The Spirit of God is upon me. Now bring this into your scenes. When you open the banking app, do not bow to the first number you see. Pause one breath. Remember, this is the temple of the living God. Let promise precede figure. Then read, not as a supplicant, but as a steward, and let the next simple step appear. When you check email, do not let subject lines prophesy doom. Retire within for a moment. Lo, I am with you always. And then answer with clarity, not haste. When you negotiate a salary or set a price, you are not pleading for worth. You are bearing witness to worth that God is expressing as you. Speak plainly, listen quietly. Hold your value without bravado or apology. If an adjustment is right, you will feel it. If standing firm is right, you will feel it. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God guiding the words and the pauses. Understand protection. It is not exemption from the changing forms of channels. It is immunity from the belief that change can cut you off from God. A channel may alter, source cannot. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, through reorgs and revisions, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. That remembrance breaks the spell of panic and frees you for guided action. Let dignity be your atmosphere. No more pleading. No more self-abasement. Gratitude replaces desperation because you are not outside the kingdom looking in. You are within it, and it is within you. Walk today with the robe about your shoulders and the armor upon your heart. Move through offices and calls and screens as a living sanctuary, quiet, steady, generous. God is the only power. I and the Father are one. In this identity, you cease acting like a beggar and begin living as the expression of infinite supply. And so it is. Now we must speak of continuity. For the grace that steadies you in a crisis was never intended as an emergency flare. It is your atmosphere. Make this your quiet insistence. Never neglect one day of remembrance. Not when the balance is thin, and not when the balance is fat. Especially when the numbers look friendly, Be faithful to the source, lest you begin again to worship channels. God is the only power. I and the Father are one. This is the temple of the living God. Say it simply. Then be very still and let the seal be placed through silence. Take a simple rhythm and keep it, gently, without strain. In the morning, before the world speaks, let promise precede figure. Whisper within, God is the only power. I and the Father are one. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Then stop. Be silent. No plans, no outlines, only consent to presence. At midday, pause for 1 quiet minute. Withdraw your attention from screens and sentences. Very softly, lo, I am with you always. No weapon that is formed against me shall prosper. Then stop again. Let the power of God be made manifest in the silence that follows the statement of truth. In the evening, let gratitude rise. Thank you for the seen and the unseen, for what arrived and for what was wisely withheld. And then lay the day down in stillness. No rehearsal, no revising. Rest the mind in the one. And if fear returns, as habits often do not wrestle. Recognize what has appeared. The old belief in two powers knocking at the door. Let it knock. You need not invite it in. Say quietly, without heat, there are not two powers, God and conditions. God is the only power. Then be very still. The suggestion dissolves not by argument, but by absence of belief. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Feel how the breath loosens in that remembrance. Carry a small anchor with you for every corridor and call. When the mind says, "What if?" answer, "Even there, lo, I am with you." When it says, "What then?" answer, "I and the Father are one." When it says, "What now?" answer, "Be still and know." Then stop the words and let God be God. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God in silence, in stillness, in quietness, in confidence. You are not being sent out alone to meet supply somewhere ahead. Lo, I am with you. Supply is not in front of you, it is with you, as the presence that lives, moves, and has its being where you are. Therefore walk in dignity. Keep the robe about your shoulders and the armor upon your heart through daily remembrance. One day, then another, and another. Never neglecting a single day until emergency prayer is no longer your way and abiding communion is your atmosphere. God is the only power. Be not afraid. And so it is.